Well, good evening, and I am so honored to be here. I do want to just give you a little bit of information about me so you know kind of where I'm coming from as I say that I can just do this. Do I do the arrow or the space button? How did you get it to move?
The arrow down. I think I had it on full view. Maybe.
Yeah, just click. There, okay. So I just want to start off with a little bit of who I am so you can understand where I'm coming from as I talk to you tonight, because I think that's important. I'm a wife, mom, friend, and neighbor, but I'm a former educator. I was a SPED teacher and a school counselor and also a gen ed teacher. I've taught everything from first graders in the gen ed population where I had the inclusion kids to I've taught medically fragile. I've taught Down syndrome children. I've taught autism, and I was an autism specialist for quite some time. And really, when I say that, I really want to emphasize what that means is I was an autism learner. It means I got to do a lot of learning and a lot of training. I do not consider myself a specialist because I do not have autism, and I do not have a child with autism. So I think that's a title that I like to clear up and just say all it means is I learned a lot, and I'm still learning. Now I'm a licensed professional counselor, and I left the school district only for one reason. I'm very passionate about kids, and I'm passionate about families. And I found that there was a huge gap in what I was able to do as a teacher and a school counselor versus what my heart needed to do as somebody that really cared about the whole picture. And so what I have become is somebody that does a lot of work with bridging gaps with the IEP team and parents, and helping parents know how to work with IEP teams, helping IEP teams work together, because I think that's what benefits kids and families. And I do a lot of work on the mental health side for families and for children, and I do it in a very unique way. So I own a ranch that we bought specifically to do animal-assisted psychotherapy, which basically means I do traditional therapy in a non-traditional way. I do it with goats and cows and horses and donkeys and chickens and dogs. And basically, we do a lot of work on the same thing that you would do in a counseling office, but we do it in a way that's way more accessible to everyone that's interested in counseling. Because when you put kids and adults alike into nature, magic happens. So I have kind of built my own program. So, oops, this is where I'm not going to do good because I've got to quit talking so much and I gotta keep moving. Okay, so that's who I am. If you want to know more about me and that, there's a flyer in the back. You can get that and you can go to my website. The rest of tonight, what I'm going to do is I'm going to begin to talk to you a little bit about the importance of your why and your how as you're thinking about your kids through their lifespan. So that's why I've titled it 3, 13, and 30. But I want to start with just an activity. If there's somebody that would be willing to come up here with me just briefly, is there anybody? You don't have to do anything good. I just need you to stand with me. Is there anybody willing to come stand with me?
I'll come stand with you.
Come on. Whoever. Okay, he raised his hand. I heard you. I heard his talk.
That's fine.
Okay, so I'm going to do an activity with you. It's called Parallel and Resist. So all I want you to do is just follow my lead, okay? So we're going to stand beside each other. Let's just walk. How do you feel right now? How did you feel right now?
Normal.
Normal. What does normal mean?
Relaxed.
Relaxed. Okay, thank you. That's it. So what we do every day is we're either parallel or we're in resistance. It's that simple. We're either joining or we're resisting. And our kids live in that same state. So whatever age your children are, and whatever age you are, we are either in a state of parallel or we're in a state of resistance. And that is a huge thing to remember when we talk about our children and behaviors and we talk about their future, okay? So today I want to really reshape our view and of the allowance of behaviors today. I want to educate on the development of the brain. This is our why, okay? I'm not going to get too deep in the weeds. If you want to know more, I can go as deep as you want. But today I'm going to try to give you an overview of just sort of some brain development, just generalized mental health-wise, and then we're going to get into some of the other things that are more important to you, which is the how. I want you to understand the purpose of behavior in order to effectively change behavior. and I want to develop a clear path of reframing approaches, and I want to provide strategies and clinical approaches that are safe, easy, and effective, and to understand how reframing behaviors now can and does reframe the future for our kids. So with that, let's jump in. So the needs. Children, no matter what their cognitive level is, no matter what their disabilities, no matter what their challenges, they come with, along with other diagnoses, they have behaviors that are contributing to complicated relationships, educational outcomes, and future successes, right? So you can have a typical kid, and if he has behaviors, it's challenging that educational process. It's challenging that future for him, right? You can have a kid on the spectrum, and if he has behavior issues, it's going to challenge what could be his potential for his future. So it doesn't matter really what the other diagnoses are. The reality is, in our bodies, our brain, the development of our brain and how behavior impacts that and how behavior is perceived and utilized, it impacts the educational outcomes, the relationship, and our future successes. So it's really important to understand that developing brains are deeply impacted by both internal and external experiences. So a little background for you, I had a son that was terminally ill and he passed away, so I know what it's like to have a medically fragile child. I also have a blend of biological and adopted children. My adopted children are from Child Protective Services, so they came with a lot of trauma. So they academically had the accessibility to learn, but behaviorally and due to trauma, they weren't learning. And so I've lived it and I've taught it, and I've seen that behavior is definitely one of the key things as a teacher and as a mom and as a therapist. If the behavior is not working, right, then nothing else is working. So behavior to me is just such an important part. But behavior, we have to understand what the brain is doing to lead to behavior. Whatever age we're dealing with, behavior has a purpose. And if we can get to the root causes of behavior and understand what the body is doing and how that behavior is being internalized, then we can start the shift, okay? So one of the things that's really important with children is they can't manage themselves. They need help. The brain does not develop, the frontal cortex does not really develop. Science is arguing how long, but they know for sure in women it's 22, and men it's 25 years old before you have the frontal cortex really in development. That's where you think and get reason and logic. That's executive functioning, and that's what our kids are needing to be able to manage behaviors, right? They need to be able to have executive functioning. So if you have that in typically developing human beings, and then you throw in other diagnoses and challenges, right, that don't look like the typical, then how much more difficult is it for our kids to be able to access what they need to access in order to control their behavior, in order to do what they need to do at home and at school and in friendships and social groups and etc. So really understanding it's a need and it's not their fault. It's not our fault. It's not anybody's fault. It's brain. It's the brain. So with that, the home, you need manageable boundaries, you need realistic expectations in daily life, and you need tangible and effective strategies that can be applied in daily life. It's really easy for people to talk about what you need to do, but to be able to do it looks very different, right? Because we're getting into like the fact that what is driving the behavior in the first place. So, understanding the brain. I'm not going to get into the crust of this too much. I want you to know that this is some stuff I have, but what I really want to talk to you about before I get into all of this is we've got chemicals in our body. Everybody has them. We have serotonin, we have dopamine, and we have cortisol. One of the things we know is cortisol is the stress hormone, right? So if you get more stress, you get more cortisol. It creates all kinds of problems, even physical problems, right? It can affect your heart, it can affect your blood pressure, it can affect all kinds of things. But we often think of dopamine and serotonin as our friends. But honestly, the three of these are all our friends. It's just, is our body using them correctly? And the thing is, it's like walking down a street. You can walk the right way to get to where you're going, or you can be going the wrong way. It's the same thing. I forgot about that camera. Y'all remind me to stay in front of the camera. It's the same thing when you're with your chemicals of your body. All of us, our children included, have serotonin, dopamine, and cortisol, and it's either working for them and flowing the right direction, or it's working against them and flowing the wrong direction. And when those chemicals are flowing the wrong direction, you're going to have a rise in behaviors, right? So it's a physiological thing that's going on in every human. So when something's even more challenging for a child that's not typical, right, at whatever level, it's going to be even more challenging for them to gain the control that we're expecting and needing them to have in order to have relationships or to learn or to, be successful. So just really understanding that is so important. The other thing I want you to understand is we've got this nerve that runs from our brain to our gut, and it's called the vagus nerve. This is really something that's not very understood, but it's for every one of us to dig into. That we talk from our brain to our body through the vagus nerve. So we talk down from the brain to the gut, and then the gut talks for the body talks up through the same nerve. So you've got this sort of looping thing. So I want you to there's that screen. I want you to kind of think about somewhere that makes you feel good. Maybe for me it would be my ranch, right? I love my animals. So I can really envision like just relaxing and sitting out there with my goats or my donkeys. Maybe for you it's the beach. Maybe it's in the quiet space in your bedroom where nobody's demanding anything of you, right? And I want you to think about how you feel in that place. There's probably a sense of calm. There's probably a sense of just relief, right? That's called your window of tolerance. And so when that's going on, this vagus nerve is in a great place. Your brain and your gut are communicating in a healthy way because things are good. But anything that upsets you outside that window of tolerance, right? All of a sudden, you might have a top-down response where your brain is creating this guttural response, or you may feel sick at your stomach and it's creating a response in your brain. It works both ways. So outside your window of tolerance, if a bear came barreling into this room today, I'm going to have a vagus nerve response, right? I don't know which would happen to me first. I don't know if I would have a top-down or a bottom-up response, but I'm going to be responding, right? And if y'all are looking at me and you don't see the bear yet, I'm going to look like I am way out of sorts and you're not going to know what's happening to me, but I'm going to have lost the ability to go here because I'm going to be in this response system that's happening, and my chemicals are going to start doing their thing, and they're going to start running. The cortisol's going up, the serotonin's going up, the dopamine's going up. I'm having a top-down or a bottom-up response, or probably both, and I'm just looping. And y'all are like, what's wrong with her? Well, that's when behavior starts for our kids. They are having something. And how often do we want to know what it is, but we just don't, right? We just can't pinpoint. Maybe our kids are nonverbal. Maybe it's just the day and just something they're feeling. Maybe it's the clothes that just are uncomfortable. It could be anything, right? And maybe the day before, that shirt didn't bother them. But that day, the tag is just driving them crazy. So they're having this visceral response, top down or bottom up or both. And all of a sudden, you're like, what's happening to my kid? Right? What's going on? And you start your processes and all the things, and nothing's working because you don't know what it is. And then what happens to you? Guess what happens to you? Your vagus nerve kicks in, right? Your child's behavior then becomes your top-down or bottom-up response. And then everybody is in this system. It happens so often. And so what you have to understand is the brain, whatever level your child is able to cognitively work, there's base levels that's human. It's just being a human that happens to each of us. And our kids, in general, have less inhibition, right? They're going to show us, right? Typical kids, atypical kids, it doesn't matter. We're going to see it more in them because this isn't here yet. They haven't yet learned the social cues and the importance of controlling that. But then when you add even more frustration in, how they communicate, how they don't communicate, how somebody looks at them wrong, how they feel accepted, how they feel smart, how they don't feel smart, whatever those things are for each of your kids, they've got this basic response, and then they've got this added pressure, right? So mental health-wise, what I want you to understand is to start looking past the behavior and start seeing that little human. And then I want you to recognize that it's okay to be look at your own humanness, right? It's okay to not be okay. It's okay to feel embarrassed. It's okay to feel afraid. It's okay to be angry. Anger is not bad. It's just learning to becoming, an understanding of accepting and being attuned to it, okay? So the societal shift that's impacting childhood I'm not going to get into this a lot either because I don't want to over talk. But there's a lot of shit that started happening back in the 80s where we had a lot of fear parenting starting. We went from being the neighborhood where the kids rode bikes and came home when the street light came on to we were scared to let our kids go outside. We started hearing more and more about the dangers of the world, so we started protecting our kids more, right? Our vagus nerves started kicking in differently, top-down, bottom-up responses. So we've had a shift in childhood in general. By the 2000s, we had internet, and now we are looking at kids that are masters of swiping, right? How often am I like, I think I'm pretty smart, and then I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing, and I hand it to a 10-year-old, and they're like, oh, and I'm like, well, okay, right? So we've also got that going on with our kids. And I know in special education, one of the great tools is also the great enemy, which is technology, right? It's the great tool, it's access to communication, it's access to, opportunity for them to be stimulated in a safe way. It's a calming technique. There's so many things that it does well, but it's also inhibiting the development of the brain. So there's so many things working against the basic human, aside from the diagnoses that go along with having, an atypical kid, okay? So I just want you to really have an understanding of that because it's so important. And it's called the great rewiring of the brain. And y'all can dig into this later, but it's like the stress response of the lion and the zebra versus human. A lion and a zebra, if a lion's attacking a zebra, it has the response. The lion goes away, the zebra is instantly back to homeostasis. It's back to that calm state. We don't do that. Your kids do not do that. Something feels attacking to your child, they have the response, and then they stay there. And the more and more that technology has become the controller, or the more we've done a lot of these things and ignored the mental health part that's happening for all of us, no matter what our development or our abilities are, the more that rewiring is happening. And it's a harder and harder and harder thing to calm our kids. And so we've got kids at 3, 13, and 30 that look the same because we've had a great rewiring going on just in the physiological mental health development of our children. Then we deal with, on top of that, their IQ, their diagnoses, their physical difficulties, whatever it may be. So just having an understanding of why I want to talk to you about what I want to talk to you about, this is what it is. Be aware that there's so much more to your kiddo going on than their diagnoses, right? There's so much more going on. Look at the world. I don't want to be doom and gloom, but man, all you have to do is watch the news. Our kids are in crisis, and it doesn't matter necessarily the diagnosis. But that's okay, because now what we do is we respond, right? We don't stay in the sad. So the question of the day is, with more understanding of the brain, how the behaviors your child is doing today look at 3, 13, or 30. So one of the things I'm very passionate about is for what I want you to understand is responses by you are impacting what your kid looks like at 3, 13, and 30. We're often looking at the child, but I get to talk to the parents today, and I am passionate about you understanding that it's okay for you to have responses, but how you have to gain control of you in order to teach your kids how to gain control of themselves, right? And it's not with shame, it's not with guilt, it's not with anger or frustration being at the forefront. It's accepting that we're human, right? But what we do with that impacts, and there's oftentimes, one of the things that when I was in education, I had a really cool program that I worked half a day with the kids, and then I went into the home for a half a day with every family once a week. And what I did was, it's not real learning until it happens in the home, right? Doesn't matter if they can do it in our safe little environment of bubble, right? It's what are they doing at home? So I had the privilege of working with the kids at school, doing a lot of teaching, and then going into the home and going, okay, now but what's real life like out here? And how do we make this work? And one of the things that was so typical was how often the surrender happened, right? Because what's happening in the home? You're surviving, right? There's too much. You've got other children, you've got demands of the job, you've got dinner that's got to be, you've got the lawn, you've got the husband, you've got the wife, you've got whatever is going on. And so what's the easiest thing to do, right? Surrender. Oh my gosh, I just need them to calm down. And oftentimes that looks like a little 3-year-old throwing a fit, right? So you give the iPad. right? Well, right then, the brain, who doesn't have a frontal lobe, is setting a pattern. And the pattern is, if I hit, I get this. So hitting is good because I get this, right? That's all they care about. So every time we surrender, we are teaching our 3-year-old that that works. Well, what does that look like at 13, right? When the police officer's on campus and they've met their limit. So they're doing a 3-year-old tantrum in a 13-year-old body because their frontal lobe still isn't there. And they're struggling with their, the way that they communicate, or they're struggling with that tag on the back of their shirt. And they're like, well, this works with mom, this works with dad, this works with grandma. Boom. Then what happens, right? We're in a problem. And then let's fast forward to 30. So I worked with a mom, and she had, her daughter was intellectually disabled, and she was passionate with me. She's like, no mercy. And I was like, whoa, I don't do that. And she's like, no, seriously. She said, I'm a prison guard. No mercy. And so we had a lot of conversations, and I said, let's talk about that. And she said, I see the SPED kids that are 30-ish, adults, that are in the prison system. Nobody cares. Nobody cares what their diagnosis is. Nobody cares what their IEP was. They care that they went out, they did a crime. Now, we're training police officers. We're training prison systems, but y'all, everything's a process and it takes a long time. So when you're looking at your 3-year-old, or maybe you're the one with a 13-year-old that you're like, whoa, we're kind of having some problems. Or maybe you've already got the adult child, and you're thinking, oh my gosh, it's too late. It's not too late. It is not too late. But right now is the start of it could be too late. So whatever age your child is, I want you to be thinking about that they are a human beyond anything that they're diagnosed with. They have basic needs, they have basic mental health needs, and they have basic visceral, physical, physiological responses that if you're reinforcing that behavior, good or bad, at 3, it's going to stick around at 13, and it's going to stick around at 30. And that's either going to go well for them, or it's going to go really, really bad for them, which means it's either going to go well for you, or it's going to go really, really bad for you. So I'm passionate about the understanding of what you do today impacts tomorrow. I've seen it, and listening to this mom who had a child who really struggled, right, intellectually, and she was like, no mercy, because she saw it. I told her, you need to write a book. So, and that was the story of Alicia. Alicia gave me a run for my money daily. When her mama said no mercy, I was like, oh, I kind of get it. Because she meant it. She wanted to see if she could undo me every day. And guess what my body would do, right? I would have a physiological response every time. I had a student that towered me. He was 6'5". I used to be thin, used to be young, but he was scary. He was big. He was big. His intelligence was there, but he did not have the coping mechanisms that had not been held to the level of accountability that he needed to be. And my scariest day was standing in the classroom with him, and one of my paras had mistakenly, she did crosswalk duty, and she'd come in, we had one of those big metal crosswalk signs, the big ones. And I walked into the room, and he walked in ahead of me, and he saw it, and he was not having a good day. And he walked in, and he got that stop sign. He was a 5th grader, but he was 6'5", okay? So I'm seeing, what's he gonna be at 30, right? He got that stop sign, and he started doing this like a bull. And I was like, oh gosh, here we go. And he's got a weapon. And he turned that on its side, and we were in a standoff. I was having a physiological, the bear just entered the room response, and he was having a physiological, whatever was going on with him response, and I was gonna pay. I ended his recess, I was gonna pay. And so, what does that look like at 65? I mean, at 30, if that's what he looks like at 6'5". What am I doing, y'all? I'm a better counselor than I am a technical person.
Fine.
So I want you to think about that, and I want you to think about, with more understanding of the brain, how do these behaviors your child is doing today look, right? So think of your own child. Maybe you've got the sweetest child in the world, and that's how they get everything they want, because they're so just sweet that you just baby them to death, because who wouldn't, right? Kids are cute. kids are cute and they're sweet and they're fun and you want to just, but what does that look like at 30? Do you want your child at 30 being sweet to everybody to try to get what she wants? Because maybe that means she's sexually assaulted. Maybe that means he's bullied and taken advantage of and somebody takes all of his money, right? It doesn't matter if the behaviors are negative or positive. If they're out of balance, in order to manipulate the circumstances, they will set a pattern that it works, and that will look differently at 3, 13, and 30. So you have to be able to, with your own brain, stay in a calm state enough to be able to ask yourself that question intentionally. What am I doing today as the mom, as the dad, as the guardian, as the grandparent, to make sure that I'm providing a pattern that says best self? It's best self. It's not whether it's working or not for them now, or whether it's cute or scary now. It's what am I doing to ensure this child is working towards his or her best self, no matter what their diagnosis is, okay? And mental health is the important part. Why is it not? Well, look at that, y'all. I can just do this. I can just scroll. Okay, so according to Webster, the way in which one conducts himself is what behavior is. In ADA, when we talk about behavior, we really mean anything a person says or does, okay? So behavior is anything. Behavior can be good, behavior can be bad, behavior can kind of even be neutral. It's just, sometimes they don't do anything. That's a behavior. So you've got to think about everything that you're doing is a behavior. Everything that I'm doing right now is a behavior. Everything your child is doing is a behavior. So we need to stay in a state of being aware of ourselves. Then we can be aware of our children, and then we can be intentional about creating a space where everybody is working together for best self. Okay? So observable actions are all the things that other people can see, which is overt, so that outward behavior. But there's also the behavior that is everybody else may not be able to see it, such as feelings, emotions, thinking, and remembering. Y'all, one of the greatest gifts that you can give yourself is permission to feel. Permission to feel. It's okay to not like your child today. It's okay. There's no guilt or shame in that. My kids don't like me every day either, right? There's no shame in saying, I just don't like them today. And I feel it to my core. It's okay to feel furious, right? The feelings, that covert behaviors, the feelings and emotions and the thinking and the rememberings that we do, there's nothing wrong with those. It's what do we do when we get to the overt, right? What are we doing with those feelings? And what are our children doing with those feelings? What are we doing with our thoughts and our memories? And what are our children doing with those? Where it becomes a problem is not that we think it or that we feel it, or that our kids think it or that they feel it. That 5th grader that was 6'5" had every right to be mad at me. I took his recess. I was kind of mad too. It's fun out there, right? It wasn't a problem that he was mad that I took recess from him. He's a 5th grader. Go play. That's what they wanted to do. The problem was that he wanted to take my head off with a stop sign. And he meant it, right? He did not have control of overt, right? Same thing if they come in and they're sweet as pie and they're just loving on me and telling me how pretty I am and they're stroking my hair and they won't do a single math problem or they won't read or they won't, do whatever I'm asking. That's overt. That you can love me all day long, but that's not going to make you successful because I'm not going to be here when you're 30. Y'all may not be here when your kids are 30. You may not be here when your kids are 50. There's a point where we're no longer the answer. They have to learn to depend on themselves. And the way they do that is you learn to teach them to depend on themselves. In the healthiest, mental healthist, is that a word? I made it up. We're going to go with it. Mental healthist way, right? The healthiest mental health way we can, okay? So think about overt. That's where we have to work. Covert, it's okay. If you're struggling with really bad feelings, that's what I'm for. They're not bad. It just needs to be worked out. They're coming from somewhere, we need to address them. Really teaching our kids and teaching ourselves how to get into letting ourselves feel those feelings is huge, right? That's why I do mental health. That's why I'm passionate about education, I'm passionate about parents, I'm passionate about kids, but I'm passionate about therapy. Because it's not wrong to feel what you feel. It's just learning where's that coming from and what do I do with it? Sometimes we need help, so don't be ashamed of that. We've got to get past that in our society. Okay, 4 functions of behavior. They either do it for attention, for escape, for something tangible, or for something automatic, right? So attention, the behavior gets an immediate social response of some form or another, negative or positive. Escape, they're trying to get out of something, right? Behavior is powerful to get you out of escape. Did my 5th grader come in and do math right then? Nope. Nope. Because I was holding a beanbag protecting my neck, waiting on help, right? He was escaping exactly what he wanted to, right? Tangible, the behavior allows the person to access a specific item or activity that they want, right? So this behavior is going to get me that. I throw a fit, mom gives me the iPad, I'm going to do it every time. I go to the store and she gets embarrassed. She feels inwardly embarrassed because people are now looking at me throw a fit. They're not processing all of that. They're like, mom gives me M&Ms when I do this in the store. Every time. I'm going to do it bigger next time because I want M&Ms and I want Tootsie Rolls, right? Tangible. And then automatic, behavior reinforces itself through a sensory input. So there's something sometimes just sensory about it. Have you ever wanted to just slap somebody? Yeah, well, so do our kids, and they do, right? That's impactful. There's an immediate release. You've heard about teenagers cutting, right? The reason teenagers cut, they're looking for a sensory, immediate, effective release. So they're taking some kind of sharp object and they're surface cutting because there's an instant relief. It's like, have you ever had a scab you ripped off? It's like we call it a good hurt, right? There's a good hurt to that. We all have something that's painful. Like, I love peppers. That's a pain. Like, I eat some hot peppers and I'm like, but I love it, right? It's a good hurt, right? So there's sometimes an automatic sensory input, especially with our sensory kids, right? Where they're getting something so reinforced that it's almost automatic for them. So we've got some hills to climb. And if we're reinforcing that the wrong way, what are they going to do when they're 30? And what's that police officer going to do? What's the societal response to that? Are they going to be able to hold a job if slapping people feels good? And they're supposed to be sacking groceries and they're like, I don't like you. No, they're out, right? They're not going to care that they were in a work study program learning to do a job. They're going to be like, you can't slap customers, you're out. So you have to think about 3, you have to think about 13, you have to think about 30. Okay? So now what? So you have to adjust your belief and disbelief. You have to trust in yourself and your child, no matter what their behaviors are right now. No matter what you're struggling with, you have to start to build some trust. That's where you have to start to reframe your thinking. You have to assess, you have to observe what they're doing, and you have to identify the purpose for their behavior. What are they doing it for, right? Get to the core of it. That's easier said than done, but when we are in control of ourselves, that's when it can happen. So I'm going to pause right there, and I'm going to ask you all to put your hands right here on your ribs. And I want you, with me, we're going to breathe in 3, and then we're going to breathe out 4, okay? In your nose, out your mouth. Ready? Go. Now out. Do it one more time. Really breathe it in, make those ribs full, and then you're going to push it out so you don't have air. Ready? Go. What do you feel? Anybody? What, sorry? Yeah. There's an instant just relief, right? When you are amping up, when your kids are amping up, what I want you to do is breathe. That is the most tangible, accessible strategy I can give you. Breathe before you react and teach your kids to do the same thing. If your kids, no matter what their level, are alive, they have breath, right? And they can breathe somehow, right? You may have a medically fragile child, that's a little bit different. But other than that, if they're able to breathe on their own, this will calm them down, because what's happening is there's that looping I talked about, right? When you breathe, it's like turning off the alarm. It's like a fire alarm going off. And if it just keeps going, how are we going to function? But if we can turn that alarm off, then we can start to process what we need to do. Breathe. When you are observing behaviors and your kids are doing something, if you breathe and they breathe, you will automatically calm your system down, and you'll be able to access all those things that you're learning in all of these different trainings and the things you're reading on your own and the things that you're your schools are teaching you. But if you don't breathe, you're amping up, they're amping up, amp up, everybody's amping up, and nobody's safe, okay? So then act. Have a plan for each function of behavior, practice that plan, and act on that plan every single time. I don't know your kids, so I can't get into the details of what you need to do with your child, but you know your child, right? You know your child. And you know when your child does this, it looks like this. So you need to be sitting with yourself and you need to say, what are the behaviors right now that I'm scared about for their future? And then you need to be building a plan. That plan needs to start with breathing, and then it needs to be tangible, actionable, and easy. And then, here's the secret that I need you to know. Don't practice it with your kid first. You practice it first. Until your body is automatic in a safe zone, you will not be able to access that plan in an emergency zone, okay? So what that means is when your kid is at school or when your kid is calm, you're thinking about the behavior that's the hardest to deal with, and you're practicing that plan. You're practicing your breathing. Y'all should be practicing that breathing we just did 5 or 6 times a day. If the plan for your child is they need to get into a calming chair, right? Calming station. They do good on a swing, or they do good with a sensory thing. You need to be practicing how am I going to help them access that. I know one of the things they're doing in the other room is they're talking about with your kids how to be calm. And your kids know more than you what they need. So learn what your kid needs in that behavior. What is their purpose, and how can you meet that in a safe way, right? How can you meet their need? Because when you have compassion for the reason that they're behaving, and you have a plan that shows that compassion, they're going to respond to that. But you have to be prepared for that. So create the plan, okay? And then practice the plan, and then act on that plan every single time. If you're not consistent, they're not going to believe you, right? I had a daughter. She's a typical kid. She's strong-willed as they come. I deserve her. I was too. So it's all my fault that I had her. But she tested everything. So I could say, don't cross that line, and she'd be like, yep, that one. Move your foot back. Right? And she's 21, and guess what she's still doing? You know? But she's doing it in a healthy way. Instead of like fighting that, what did I have to do? I had to have a plan to embrace that. I had to allow her to be who she is. But I had to have a plan on how that was going to work in my family and in my life and for her future. So, really important that you adjust your belief and trust the process. You assess, and I think this just quit. So, hopefully y'all can still hear me. Oh, there's another microphone somewhere if I need it. Anyway, I can talk loud. And then access that plan. Okay? So here's some strategies. Short statement of expectation. Thank you. Okay. Is it on? Can you hear me? Okay. All right. I want you to remember when the frontal lobe or the executive functioning, when the behavior kicks in, nobody has the ability to connect here anymore. It's all about the pattern behavior. So that is not your teachable moment. When your kid is melting down, it's not when you say, oh, okay, there, sorry, I'm not with the microphones. When your kid is melting down, that's not the time to try to teach them why they don't do that. Oh, don't do that because you're going to hurt, Susie Q. They don't care. They're not listening. Their brain is in the emotional state. So short statements of expectation. Sit, walk, calm, stop. Simple, direct, and short. Do not teach when emotional behaviors are happening, okay? Ignore behaviors as appropriate with safety in mind. If it's not going to hurt you or someone else, do nothing. Do nothing. I drove, when I was in college, I drove a special ed bus, and I had a little boy who thought he was George Strait. He was wonderful, but when he got mad, he spit. And he spit because it was impactful, right? If you've got spit in your face, you're having a reaction. So guess what I did? I went and bought a rain jacket. And when it was my turn not to be driving but to be sitting, and I sat with him, I zipped up the rain jacket, I tied it really tight around my face, and I turned this way, and every day that he got mad, there would be spit running down the back of my rain jacket. He got zero reaction out of me until I felt the spit stop. And then I would turn around and be like, hey, and I would have whatever conversation I needed to have with him. Guess who quit spitting on me? It It didn't work anymore. So you've got to think about creativity with the behaviors that send you like, oh my gosh, right? What can you do to be creative to give no reaction if it's not a safety issue? If it is a safety issue, respond to create safety, but no words other than 1 to 2 words. Calm hands, calm body. Calm hands, calm body. And you just repeat it. Calm hands, calm body. Calm hands, calm body. Because they don't have the ability to learn in that moment. It's already challenging for them, or they wouldn't, have a diagnosis. So whatever age, if that emotional brain kicks in, remember, short, ignore what you can, and then no teaching. Then model the behavior that is expected, such as breathing. When they're throwing their fit, if they're safe, you're not being harmed and no one's being harmed, they're spitting, whatever that may be, you just breathe. Because number one, you're going to feel better, because you're going to be calming yourself, and you're going to be modeling for them. Just breathe. And then speak it. I'm going to breathe to calm. But use an I statement, not a you statement. Because they don't care what you have to say to them. Their emotional brain isn't active. So I statements. Give no feedback until they're calm and safe. And then once calm and safe, immediately state, I like that you're calm. And then you can address the need. Seems like you were upset. Want to talk about it? Seems like you're hurt. Can I help? But it's still not the teachable moment. Calm them, then respond to their need. You teach it later. We try to put too much into a behavior moment, and it sabotages, okay? So then, make it less about consequences and more about the response to change. I don't want to punish or reward all the time. There's a place for that. There's a sticker chart. There's all the things, right? I used them, and I believe in them. But it's not the first response. The first response is I want them to learn that it's more about their response to change. I like that you're calm. Let's breathe. Because the boss is maybe not going to reward that. So you've got to be thinking about 30-year-olds, not 13-year-olds or 3-year-olds, right? There's not always going to be a teacher or a parent there. So we need them to understand that behavior change is about the response within them and how they feel better. I feel calm. Do you feel calm? It feels good to feel calm, right? You can say that to anybody at any age. I could say it. If y'all were throwing a fit right here in the front row, I'd be like, ooh, let's breathe. When you calm down, now I feel better. Do you feel better? Right? It works no matter what level you are. So think about the response, not the consequence. The consequences come, and there's natural ones, right? And then there's imposed ones. But think about really to effectively change the future of our kid, and we have to think about the response to change. And then punishment never works, in my opinion. And I just need to say that again, punishment never works. It just doesn't. It creates a fear response, so if you want your kids to be afraid, or it creates it's got a control factor to it, but if nobody's there to punish, what are they gonna do? You see those kids, right? They live in fear, so they're the perfect angels until daddy's gone, or mommy's gone, or teacher's gone, and then they just lose it. It's the kids that go to college, typical kids, you see it in them. They go to college and you're like, whoa, they've lost their minds. They're just they've gone hog wild, right? There's nobody there to punish. Punishment doesn't work. Expectation and redirection does. Okay, I raise really hard kids. Not all of them, but kids from trauma, behavior is their answer. It's their coping mechanism, it's their protection, and punishment doesn't work. Okay? So, when not in behaviors, create proactive word reframing to support behavior changes. So you want to practice with them, just the way that you practice your plan, you want to practice with them. When they're being calm, oh, calm body. Good job, love your calm body. You're reinforcing it all the time. That whole 10 to 1, 10 positives to 1 negative, it's real. The brain remembers the negative. If I said all of this stuff today, and then at the end I said, well, y'all were boring, what are you going to leave here thinking about? How rude is she? She just called us boring. All this other stuff I said to you is going to go out the window because you're going to be like, she's rude. So think about that with your kids, right? So when things are good, when you're calm, when they're calm, reinforce, reinforce, reinforce. Okay? How am I doing on time? Am I good? 10 minutes. Okay. Do y'all need a break? You need to stretch? Y'all are adults, but we all need breaks. Am I boring you?
No.
Need to shake it off for a minute? Okay. Keep going?
Yes.
Okay, all right. So positive impacts, relationships, self-perceptions, emotional outcomes, and learning outcomes. You guys, if you start looking at your kids towards their 30-year-old self, you are going to change relationships now. You're going to change their self-perceptions because they're going to learn without a frontal lobe and even with their disabilities or their struggles or their challenges, they're going to learn, I've got value. I can do this, right? And it won't be perfect. It'll never be perfect. I'm not perfect. I'm perfect, right? We're not expecting perfection. And when our kids learn that that's okay, but that we can get back into control, you're going to change their self-perceptions. They're going to stop thinking that people don't like them. They're going to stop thinking that they're bad. They're going to stop thinking that they're different, and they're going to start accepting themselves. They may not be able to vocalize that, but it's an innate mental response that happens when we create the appropriate responses to our kids and our belief and our trust in their future, not their now, right? If my kids were, who they were at 3, at 30, I'd be tired. I'd be tired, right? But if I look towards what I know they can be in their 30s, what I'm going to believe for them and what I'm going to trust myself in building towards, and then I'm going to trust them to come with me for that ride, we're going to get somewhere. It may not be where we want everything to be. Life doesn't work that way. We've all learned that, haven't we? We've all had hard things. But we can be closer. And it can be more than what it is. But we have to see it and believe it and go for it. So it will change their self-perceptions. Emotional outcomes. Listen, if you align with your kids emotionally by allowing them to see that you have the emotions too, I'm feeling really angry right now. I'm going to breathe. Then they're going to be like, oh, it's not bad to feel angry? Nope. It's not bad to feel angry. It's not bad to want to hit somebody. It's just, are you going to do it? Right? There are a lot of people I'd like to hit sometimes, right? I'm not going to do it. I don't want to go to jail. If my kids start to see that I align with them, that I feel it too, guess what's going to happen? They're going to have better self-perception. Their emotional outcomes are going to change as well because they're going to be emulating, right? They're not going to be controlled or fearful of a punishment or overreactive to get a reward, right? They're going to start to build some self-control at whatever level they can. I know it doesn't look the same for any child, no matter where they are on any spectrum. None of my kids, biological, adopted, none of them are the same, right? So we can't expect them to look like all the other kids. We want them to look like their best self. Again, it's believing in their 30-year-old best self, right? Emotional outcomes change, and then learning outcomes. We often put education first. I never cared if my kids could read, if they didn't know how to not hit people. I could care less if you can read, because nobody's going to care if you're reading in prison, right? I cared if they knew how to be safe, if they knew how to be respectful, if they knew how to honor space for people, honor space for self. Because once those things fall into place, then guess what? Education comes. So if you've got little kids, quit worrying about if they're reading yet. Of course, do the work. I'm a teacher at heart. Do the work with them that you can. But that's not top priority. Their mental health, their emotional connection, their ability to see themselves as valuable, that has to be in place first. So then the learning outcomes come. Okay? Reduce stress, reduce anxiety by labeling emotions. So this is really important. This is something I want you doing with your kids. Now, a lot of you do this from school. Like, I call them the kindergarten words. I feel good, I feel bad, but I don't want that. I want you literally labeling the emotions when they're in the thick of it. When they're throwing a fit down there, I want to go, ooh, goodness, you seem angry. Are you angry? That's when we give them permission, right? That's when we give them permission to feel it and to label it. And then we help them. If they can't label it, we label it for them, and then we give them a permission to sort of sit with that, right? Labeling the emotions, because that allows, when I can say I'm angry, when my husband makes me mad, I'm like, why don't you go back to work? If I can say, you know what, I'm kind of mad right now, I just immediately feel a little bit better, you know? But if I have to act like everything's fine because his, brother's over, and I'm like, right? I'm having more stress internally. Our kids are no different. They're human. They're human first. So label their emotions for them. Teach them how to do that. reduce that anxiety, it promotes healing, it promotes resilience. The amygdala is associated with fear, and when we can decrease that in kids by labeling their emotions, they're going to control their behaviors. It is science, and it doesn't matter what other diagnosis, or it doesn't matter what they've learned so far. If we start to connect with their feelings and validate their feelings, we can make progress. And it only happens in a safe environment created with intention. That's your planning. I'm going back to, you have to plan. And you have to know it like the back of your hand, because you're an emotional person too. And they're gonna tick you off, right? Or they're gonna overwhelm you, or they're gonna make you wanna curl up in the corner and be free again yourself. So you have to plan and identify your own emotions and learn how to label your own emotions in order to be able to help them do theirs. And I think oftentimes as parents, you're trying to be superheroes. Y'all have a hard job, right? When I taught school and I got to go in the homes, I'm like, my job's easy. It's a controlled environment. Your job is real. Your job is real. It's the daily. It's all the interruptions, all the things that can go wrong, right? It's all the good, the bad, and the uglies. And it's not controlled. So label your own emotions and be real with yourself, then let your kids do it. Okay? Reframe the self-perceptions, external voice versus internal voice, hope versus defeat, proactive versus reactive, reset to restart, overcome past experiences, and the 10-to-1 rule. I've already talked about that. I'm kind of going fast because I'm running out of time. And y'all have these, but I want to hit on the things that are important. Reframe learning impacts. When reframing changes relationships, self-perception, and emotional outcomes, then you've got the optimal environment you need for your kids to learn. So whether your kids are going to school, whether you're working with them at home, create the relationship first. Then work on that self-perception. You're not bad. That behavior was hard, right? And then work on the emotional outcomes. What are you feeling? And let's label it. Then, okay, so I have the story of Ian and Jesse and Josine. Okay, these were kids that were by kindergarten. They weren't on any kind of spectrum. They weren't SPED kids. They were just the kids that got that label, right? Holy cow, these kids are tough, right? So I went into gen ed for one reason, and it was because I had been working with the younger populations, and they were getting into the older classrooms and being told they couldn't do it, right? Because teachers didn't know. So I was like, I want to go in first grade. And then I would say, give me the SPED kids, but give me those kids. Give me the Ians, and I've changed their names. Give me the Ians, the Jessies, the Josines, okay? Jesse and Josines were twins. I had Jesse. Josine went to another environment. That teacher couldn't handle him, and I was like, give me Josine. And what happened was we had kids that knew. They knew that people thought they were bad. So they were proving them right every day. Every day. So I walked in, it's like the second day of school, and Ian, Dad walked in. He was like an MMA fighter. He walks in and he's like, this one, he's gonna give you a run for your money. He's like, and you're not gonna be able to do anything about it. I was like, oh, so the dad's already given up on him too. First grade. First grade, y'all. He's 6. So I was like, he probably will give me a run for my money, so will every other one in this classroom, because they're first graders. So, yeah, I'm ready. Got my running shoes. Well, second day of school, I walk in, and Ian's on top of the table, and he's jumping from table to table. Like, how'd you get in my classroom, first of all? You're not supposed to be in here. And second of all, whoa, you're jumping. That's pretty impressive. And then he really topped it, and he did a backflip off the table. So what would be a typical response of a teacher? Go to the office, right? You know what I did? I was like, holy cow! You just did a backflip off that table? How did you learn how to do that? I celebrated him for what he could do first. Then I said, seems like maybe you knew you weren't supposed to do that in the classroom. Where do you think a better place would be to do a backflip? And he was like, recess. I was like, do you think you could show me again at recess in the right way? He was like, yeah. Guess who never did a backflip off my table again? Because I didn't punish him. I acknowledged him and I embraced him. I made him have value, okay? We can change behaviors. Okay, here's some tangible strategies. I'm gonna go through quickly because then I gotta quit because I think I've got like 1 minute, right? Am I done? I got 2 minutes. Okay. Mirroring. Say what you want to hear said. Say it to your husband, he'll say it back eventually. Say it to your kids, they'll say it back eventually. Mirror, saying what you want to say. It's one of the most powerful things you can do. Mirroring is a gift. Everything that you want from your kid, mirror it in what you say and do, okay? Change the words to change the perception. Change the words to change the perception. Oh my goodness, you can do a backflip. You aren't supposed to do a backflip, right? Validate and change the words to change the perception. You're not bad. You can do something really cool. Can't do it in here. Let's do it at recess, okay? Mindset moments. Teach this, practice this, believe this. Mindset moments. How you think guides how you feel. Teach your kids how to think so that they know how to feel. I feel happy today. I like the sun today. Whoo, right? Teach them. It doesn't come naturally. Okay? Practice the reset. Give permission to try again. One of the greatest things I did as a mom was reset. I blew that, guys. Let's try it again. Or you blew that. Let's try it again. Reset. Okay? Celebrate failure to create growth. Can't tell you the story. I would love to about my son and the wrestling experience, but we're out of time. Believe. Okay, I'm going to end with this. I want you to believe. If you take nothing else away from me today, quit worrying about your kid's diagnosis. There's enough people that are going to do that for you, and they'll talk to you about it, right? That's the IEP team's job, is to tell you all the things you need to know about the diagnosis. Quit worrying about what the people are thinking that don't understand your kiddo. I don't care what they're thinking in the grocery store. You love your kid and know your kid. If your kid is 30 and people are still looking at them, quit worrying about it. You believe. Whatever stage of life your kid is in, start with yourself and say, I'm going to believe that I'm a good enough parent, and I'm going to believe that they're just fine. And then work that direction. It will change your kids. If you have any more questions, I've got papers back there. I do animal-assisted psychotherapy. It's powerful. I do groups with SPED kids. Would love to work with y'all. Would love to help you further. But I'm going to turn it over because y'all are going to do some really cool something games, and I can't wait to watch.
I put her flyers on the table, like right when you walk out, where you picked up your handouts, so that it would be easy for you guys to grab. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
So on the last page of your handout are the questions. If you haven't done this before, we're going to do an activity where we get to talk to each other. And if it sounds scary, that's okay. Just say, it sounds scary, and take a deep breath. But everybody who's done it loves it. So I think when you get done, that you'll be glad you did it. So we're going to get in groups of 6 to 8. And so if you're sitting in a front table, it usually helps just to turn your chair around and be with the group behind you. And then Amy's going to give you a dice to roll. And on the last page are the questions that correspond to the numbers. And if you don't like the question, you can just roll again. Because we're adults and we can change the rules. But the idea is just to get you guys talking to each other about your experience.